In the heart of 19th century pre-colonial West Africa, there lived a certain kind of people called the Igbos, and just like the ancient Greek city-states, they were made up of tiny autonomous groups called clans. At that time, 9 of them existed: Abame, Ezimili, Aninta, Mbeno, Mbanta, Umuazu, Ikiosha, Elumelu, and Umuofia. Umuofia was the greatest of them all, and no one dared to go to war with her. She was feared by all her neighbors because of her powerful deity and warriors of tremendous strength. One of such warriors, and perhaps the greatest, was Okonkwo, the roaring flame. Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 clans and even beyond. As a young man of 18, he had brought honor to his village by throwing down Amalinze the Cat, who for 7 years had remained unbeaten. Amalinze was called the Cat because his back would never touch the head until Okonkwo threw him. Okonkwo's father, Unoka, was the exact opposite of him. Lazy and incapable of thinking about tomorrow, he owed every neighbor some money. He was poor and had no titles. The only thing he was good at was playing the flute, which he did all day. He eventually died of swelling in his stomach, which was an abomination to the head goddess, and as such, he was carried to the evil forest and left there to die with his flute by his side. Okonkwo's entire life was dominated by fear. The fear of failure, the fear of weakness, the fear of ending up like his father. As a result, he was ruled by one passion: to hate everything his father loved. He, however, found a father figure in the person of Wankibie, the richest man in Umuofia, who Okonkwo worked for to earn his first seed yams, and in no time, Okonkwo became rich and married 3 wives. One day, news reached Umuofia that some men from Mbeno, a neighboring clan, had murdered a woman from Umuofia. She was the wife of Umuofia Udo, one of the chiefs in Umuofia. She had gone to the market at Mbeno and was murdered on her way back. A meeting was held and an ultimatum was immediately dispatched to Mbeno, telling them to choose between going to war or offering a young man and a virgin girl as compensation. Mbeno, out of fear of going to war, agreed to the second option and sent a virgin and a young boy of 15 called Ikemefuna. The girl would serve as a replacement to Umuofia Udo's murdered wife, and Ikemefuna would become the property of the clan, as they were in no hurry to decide his fate. Okonkwo was asked on behalf of the clan to look after him in the interim. At first, Ikemefuna was afraid of the strange environment he found himself in. He often thought of his mother and his 3-year-old sister and wept bitterly. But after 3 years, he became popular in Okonkwo's household because he was lively and energetic. Okonkwo himself became fond of the boy, inwardly of course, as he never showed any emotion openly, unless it was the emotion of anger. For him, showing affection was a sign of weakness, and the only emotion worth showing was that of strength. One day, Umuofia Ezeodo, the oldest man in Umuofia, visited Okonkwo and told him that Umuofia had decided to kill the young lad and that they would take him outside Umuofia and finish him. He also advised Okonkwo to have nothing to do with the lad's death because he called him father. This news pained Okonkwo, for he had already come to care for Ikemefuna. Later that day, he called Ikemefuna and told him that he would be taken home the next day. The next day, some men came around, fully dressed, with a pot of wine, which they gave to Ikemefuna to carry for the journey. Okonkwo would be accompanying them, so Ikemefuna wasn't afraid. While on their way, the men talked and laughed about issues from the village, but as soon as they drew near the outskirts of Umuofia, silence fell upon them. Okonkwo, who had been beside Ikemefuna, had suddenly withdrawn to the rear. Ikemefuna felt his leg melting under him, but he was too afraid to look back. As Okonkwo looked away, the man, now directly beside Ikemefuna, drew up his machete and cut the lad down. Okonkwo heard him cry, and as Ikemefuna ran towards him for safety, he drew up his machete and finished him off, because he was afraid of being thought weak. Okonkwo did not taste any food for 2 days after the death of Ikemefuna. News spread that Umuofia Ezeodo, the oldest man in Umuofia, had died. The whole village was preparing to give him a befitting burial. When the day came, everyone from all parts of Umuofia was in attendance, and when it was time to bury him, guns were fired as a last salute. And then, from the center of the crowd, cries of horror and agony filled the air. A boy lay dead in a pool of blood. It was Umuofia's 16-year-old son. Okonkwo's gun had exploded and a piece of iron had pierced the boy's heart. It was a crime against the head goddess of Umuofia to kill a clansman, and any man who committed it must flee the land. But because Okonkwo's offense was accidental, he could return to the clan after 7 years. The next morning, Okonkwo and his family left for Umbanta, his motherland. His house in Umuofia was set ablaze, his animals killed, his barns destroyed. Obierika, Okonkwo's best friend, was among the men who destroyed his house, as they were simply cleansing the land which Okonkwo had polluted by shedding the blood of a clansman. While in Umbanta, Okonkwo was greatly received and treated well by his uncle Ushendu, the oldest man in Okonkwo's extended family, and although he missed Umuofia, he found a certain peace in his motherland. About the time Okonkwo was in exile, a white man appeared in Abame, a neighboring clan, with his bicycle. At first, people who saw him ran away, but the fearless one went near him and even touched him. The elders of the clan consulted their oracle, and he told them that the strange man would break their clan and spread destruction amongst them. And so, they killed the white man and tied his bicycle to a sacred tree for fear that it would run away to call the man's friends. But one morning, 3 white men, led by a band of ordinary men, came to the clan. They saw the bicycle tied to a tree and left. Only a few people saw these men, and for many market weeks, nothing else happened. On the day Abame was having a big market sale, and everyone in the clan gathered at the market, the 3 white men and a very large number of other men surrounded the market and began to shoot. Everybody was killed except the old and the sick who were at home. Abame was completely wiped out that day. In Umbanta, the Sunday arrival of white missionaries had caused a considerable stir. They preached about their strange religion, and although they didn't convince Okonkwo, they were able to convince his son, Wunye. Okonkwo disowned him in the process. When the missionaries asked for a plot of land to build their church, the natives gave them the evil forest, where they buried those who died from really evil diseases because they did not want them near the clan. The inhabitants of Umbanta expected all the foreigners to be dead within 4 days, but when it was the 4th day and nobody died, they started to believe that the white man's fetish had unbelievable powers. For this, the church started to gain converts. Amongst the converts were outcasts and misfits who became some of the strongest adherents to the new faith. One of them, named Ukoli, brought the church into serious conflict with the clan by killing the sacred python in Umbanta. He fell ill the next day and died before the day was over. In Umbanta, there was no punishment for a man who killed the sacred python on purpose because nobody thought such a thing could ever happen. After 7 years in exile, Okonkwo was allowed to return to Umuofia, but upon arrival, Umuofia had changed. The church had come and led many astray. Not only did they convert the outcasts, but occasionally a wealthy man joined them. Apart from the church, the white men also established a government and trade. They built a court where a district commissioner, another white man, judges cases in ignorance. This court had messengers who were the natives of a foreign tribe from a land called Umoru, where the white men first came many years ago. These court messengers were hated amongst the natives because of the way they treated them. Mr. Brown, the pastor of the church in Umuofia, had made friends with some of the greatest men in the clan and became respected by the natives. He had great respect for their variant beliefs. He built schools and trained the natives, and the main church in Umuofia was built in his time. But he became ill and had to leave. He was replaced by Mr. Smith, who was the exact opposite of him. He condemned all Mr. Brown's policies, for he saw blacks as evil. One day, something terrible happened in Umuofia. The annual worship of the head goddess, a day where the 9 marked spirit, also known as Igugu, were allowed to wander around the clan, fell on a Sunday. Because of them, the Christian women who had been to church could not go home. Some of their men had gone out to beg the Igugu to retire for a short while so that the women could get to their homes. The Igugu agreed and were already retiring when Enoch, one of the zealous converts, boasted that they would not dare touch the Christians. Upon hearing this, the Igugu came back, and one of them gave Enoch a good stroke of the cane, which they always carried along. Enoch fell upon him and tore off his marks, allowing his face to be seen by women and children around, which was a taboo in the land. And for this, Enoch had killed an ancestral spirit, something that has never happened in the history of Umuofia. The whole clan was thrown into confusion. From the marketplace, the entire band of the Igugu, armed with fire and machete, headed straight to Enoch's house and reduced it to a desolate heap. From there, they headed straight to the church, ordered Mr. Smith to leave Umuofia immediately, and set the church ablaze. For the moment, the spirit of the clan was appeased. Okonkwo was pleased with what had happened because he had always advocated for war against the white men. After this incident, every man in Umuofia went about armed with a gun or machete, as they would not be caught unawares like the men of Abame. The district commissioner, who had been absent where the Igugu event occurred, returned and was told all that happened by Mr. Smith. 3 days later, he sent for the leaders of Umuofia, 6 of them, including Okonkwo, regarding the recent happenings in the land. They honored the invitation but came with their machetes. The district commissioner received them politely and spoke kindly to them, and they dropped their machetes on the ground. But when Umuofia, one of the leaders, rose to his feet and began to tell the story, they were seized and handcuffed and led into a guard room. It happened so fast, they didn't even have the time to draw up their machetes. In the guard room, their heads were shaved and they were not given food and water for 3 days. They were asked to pay a fine of 200 bags of cowries, which should be collected from the people of Umuofia. As soon as the fine was paid, Okonkwo and his fellow prisoners were set free. As they walked home that night, Umuofia was silent. It was the time of the full moon, where the children would come out and play, but their sounds were not heard. The village square, where they always gathered for the moon play, was empty. Surely, things had really fallen apart. When Okonkwo got home, he spoke to no one because his heart was bitter. But before he went to bed, he heard that a meeting among the elders of Umuofia would be held the next day, and he was glad. Finally, Umuofia would go to war. He went into his hut and brought out his old war dress. The next morning, all the men, warriors, and elders of Umuofia gathered together to discuss going to war with the white men and their messengers. Most of them agreed, which delighted Okonkwo. But while they were still deliberating on the issue, some court messengers approached them and ordered that the meeting be stopped. This angered Okonkwo, who was now moving towards them from behind the crowd, and in a flash, he drew his machete, aimed it twice at one of the court messengers, and removed his head. The others saw this and ran for their lives. Okonkwo stood, looking at the body of the dead man, and then he knew Umuofia would not go to war. They had let the other messengers escape. These were the same men who were clamoring and agitating for war a couple of minutes ago. Feeling disappointed, he wiped his machete on the sand and left. Later, he would go home and hang himself to a tree behind his compound. When the district commissioner arrived at his house and saw his dead body, he ordered the natives to bring it down, but they refused because it was against their custom and tradition. It was an abomination for a man to take his own life. A man who committed suicide would not be buried by his clansmen, for his body is evil, and only strangers may touch it and bury it in the evil forest. And so, the white men came with their religion and government, won our brothers, divided us, and finally drove the greatest man in Umuofia to kill himself because of his undying love for his people, their custom and tradition, which was now in jeopardy in the hands of some strangers. And now, he would be buried like a dog, like his father, who he had been ashamed of and worked hard enough never to end like him. Hey guys, if you have made it to the end of this video, I want to say thank you. Reading Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart all over again for this video has made me to appreciate the fight and the resistance our forefathers put up against colonial rule. I assure you that their battles and blood were not in vain. I believe Africa will rise and become a great continent again, but we can only achieve this together. And do give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this every week. And don't forget to hit the bell notification as you do so you never miss any of my videos. See you in the next video. Bye.